back to Cyber Sea of Galilee, DSMME, on this great day of graces. Whatever time of day you are watching this, you've got the rest of the day to gain graces, don't you? And probably you will have tomorrow, though we don't know that for sure. But it's very interesting, and I was thinking about that when I read this quote of a great saint who lived in my lifetime and probably many of your lifetimes too, the great Saint John Paul II. And what did he say? Life with Christ is a wonderful adventure. We don't know what's going to happen today. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. Is everything going to be wonderful? No, from the human standpoint. What does that mean? I can't control it, can I? Now, if I could control everything, wouldn't I just fashion my life to be just perfect? And I also would fashion everybody else's life to be perfect, especially my friends and my family and the people closest to me, my own community of sisters. We would have no sufferings because it would be a perfect life, don't you know? And in reality, that would be a true life because, again, we were made for greatness. And so St. John Paul the Great reminds us that everything in life is a wonderful opportunity. Opportunity for what? To gain grace. What is grace? I'm sure you've heard the term many, many times. And when you think of grace, I remember as a small child being taught by the Dominican sisters, and they would talk about grace and they would try to visualize it for us. And they would go, okay, like if you pick up, I remember this, a milk carton and it's full of milk, then it would kind of like your soul is full of grace. Now, many people would cut that down and say, oh, how ridiculous. For me as a child, I got it. That my spiritual container called my soul, if it's full, it's full. And that's good because it's godly. Now, what is it full of? It is full of God's life. The great Dominican St. Thomas Aquinas teaches us that God's life is what we call grace. And therefore, that being true, grace is what really keeps us alive. It's not my flimsy life or my what I want or don't want, or my control. Don't we live in a weirdly controlling world and a culture that tries to control and tells us what's good and what's bad? Why don't we just look to God and say, God, tell me the truth. What is good and what is bad? And for people on the Cyber Sea of Galilee, I'm thinking most of us do that already. And so we have a rich prayer life. And so we do try to become saints. And so we do try to open to God's grace. And we would see life as an adventure because we really don't know the future. And yet we know it holds God. And we know that God is not just out there someplace, but he's constantly inside here. I'm not walking around godless and waiting for him to come through some adventure. I'm receiving the adventures, the graces God has given me. It's like God is bringing them into my soul where God already abides. Because if we are in the state of grace, our souls, whatever you want to think of them as, have God inside them. That's the indwelling. That's the Christ-likeness. That's why we are the Imago Dei. We were created in the image of God. God himself dwells within. So I do think that this is such a hopeful phrase for us to think about, that life is full of adventures by God, because as St. John Paul the Great is saying, and he was a man who knew suffering, and yet he looked at life as a great adventure. Why? Because that adventure will someday take us fully home to heaven. So let's open to the adventures with faith, with love, with charity, knowing that God is with us and the God inside me is receiving the new adventure that you or someone else may be bringing to me. God, meeting God, all things made by God. Signing off from Cyber Sea of Galilee, DSME, on this beautiful day. Have a great one.